Afternoon, the 29th of January, and before Christmas, which seems like an awful long time ago, we spoke to community champions on the programme, people who go the extra mile within their own community to look out for others. And one group we spoke to was the New Script for Mental Health, which is a movement which seeks to build a progressive and inclusive social movement, bringing together people in society who believe that there's a need for a better approach to mental health. So New Script, as I understand, was launched on the 1st of February last year. So to mark the first anniversary, it will present a show called Desperate Monologues. So to talk about these monologues, we've Magz, Gibney and Lisa Morrison from New Script in studio. Good to see both of you again, and thanks for coming in. And also with us in studio is writer Damian Gorman, who has come on board for these to prepare these monologues. So thanks to all three of you for coming in again. So Lisa, did I set out your stall correctly there, or can you remind us what New Script is about and what's the ambition?
You did very much. Thanks, Lynette. And it's lovely to be back. And New Script for Mental Health, well, the launch was last February, but in fact, we are part of Participation and Practice of Rights, PPR, which was founded by Ernest McCormick in 2004. So the New Script has actually come on the back of a lot of really valuable work that's been done over many years with a strong foundation. But what we found is that activists were saying, you know, we keep banging on the doors, trying to change systems, and it gets exhausting trying to fix little bits of the system. And what we're looking at, we kind of did a writing piece around reimagining what it could be like. And it's very much steeped in the research and the evidence. I mean, the World Health Organiser and UN just late last year was saying about the approaches are not working. We need a community collective response, a rights-based response to addressing mental health issues, because so often it's social issues, inequalities, social injustices, political. It's about power imbalances. So what the New Script does, one part of it is reimagining this new, is looking at still holding government to account. For example, the RQIA not inspecting mental health services for the last 15 years. That was found in a judicial review. This, what we're going to be talking about today, is part of the alternative. And there's a fabulous quote from our reflection day last week I've brought along, and one of the activists said, "We're taking our power back. We're not depending on the system changing. We're just doing it anyway." So rather than just waiting for things to change, we're still doing that bit, doing activism work around that, but we're also showing alternatives, evidence-based, the creative, the writing, the collective.
So that's where these Desperate Monologues come in then?
Where they've come
can you
from.
tell me how this idea has developed then, Magz?
I guess one of the things that happened, as Lisa was saying, and it was prompted in terms of COVID, like we couldn't get out on the streets and campaign and protest in the same way that we had before, and we started kind of coming together and writing. And one of the things that kind of happens quite a lot in mental health work, but for people who have experienced mental health distress and challenges themselves, but also for activists is burnout. We were exhausted. We were absolutely exhausted. And creative arts has been shown in terms of trauma recovery. Like there's some experiences that just can't be put into words sometimes because the trauma is so deep, and actually going through the process of trying to find those words can be really empowering. And a big part of it for us that we kind of realised was actually it gave us a chance to reclaim our narrative. A lot of the time, the mental health system encourages people to go in. It's not trauma informed. People are asked to retell their stories.
I remember from the last time you were in, something you said really struck me about how we approach mental health, and that question, a very simple question, what's wrong with you, needs to be turned on its head. And the question that needs to be asked is what happened to you, to try and find the trauma. So that's where you're digging deep into that with these monologues.
Well, I suppose what we're doing, like Damian come on board, and the biggest thing that we always say is you are 100% in charge of this process. So you can say as much or as little as you want. You go where you want to go. But also it's about, like we had big conversations around, this isn't about, yes, there's darkness there, but actually in the darkest places, there's always so much light. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, especially here in Northern Ireland, it's a big way that we have found to cope with, you know, some of the most difficult times is that kind of black humour and stuff. And it's these are monologues about some of the toughest, most difficult times that people have faced. But also a lot of what is evidenced in these monologues is how people turn things around, how people, in spite of all the adversity and the lack of, you know, kind of sometimes what was choice, compassion in the mental health services, found another way. And I guess that's what we're trying to inspire other people with through these monologues, is that actually there are so many ways that we can collectively come together and heal. We don't, 100%, like the mental health system for some of us, and like a lot of us we're not anti-medication, we're not anti-psychiatry, but what we are pro is choice and community and creativity. You know, like the somatic, the physical impact of trauma on the body isn't really accounted for, and actually it's through creativity. Dance for me was what launched me into recovery. I know that I would not have as healthy a relationship with my body, with, you know, in terms of levels of trust I have with other people, had I not have found dance as a teenager. There's no way.
That's incredible.
You know.
And Damian, then coming to this, a project like this as a writer, how have you approached the telling of these stories? Because as Magz was saying there, these are stories that are difficult to tell. Sometimes it's not what people are saying, it's what they're not saying. It's giving them the space, and also then trying to really impact with an audience and connect. There's an awful lot going on here.
Well, I didn't really so much approach this as a writer as I approached this as, yes, I mean, I'm a poet, like that's my vocation, but also for the last 35 years I've worked at the shoulders of people in this part of the world, in the Middle East, and, you know, in all over the place, at the shoulders of people who thought there was something at stake in them telling their own story. Right, so I approached it as a human being with that background. And I think we could all agree, is very, very strong connective human tissue, you know, from a bar to, you know, people fighting for some sort of justice. And one thing that strikes me listening to these Desperate Monologues and listening to the members of this group talking about their lives, and actually listening to people in this part of the world talking, is that for a lot of people, actually for quite a lot of people, the only justice they will get is telling their story until they think it's told. And telling their story until they think it's told with some sense that it has been heard. And it's with that idea that I've approached this. I mean, really, telling your story is how you teach somebody about you and how you trust somebody. You say, I will tell you my story. And when you get to that level of connection and that level of engagement with people, well, as you were saying, Lisa, and you were touching on, Magz, the way we live, the way we organise ourselves as society can be stood on its head, because you have heard someone. You've not heard them as somebody who might be your enemy or somebody who might be taking your resources. You have heard them as a human being. And when that happens, a lot of good things can happen, you know. And when you hear, as I have had the privilege of hearing, there's a time that, you know, somebody might be listening to this and saying, oh, for God's sake, you know, people telling their stories and all that. But we also know that there is a time when people find a voice that they find to be their own voice, their true voice. And when that happens, it's absolutely irresistible. And again, you're enormously privileged to hear the beat of somebody else's heart and to be more connected with your own heart. And
that sense of trust you've just described, how difficult, how challenging has it been to get people to the point where they're ready to let their story be heard, to let you help them to tell their story, to get to this point?
I don't get people to that point. People get themselves to that point. You know, all I can say is because it's true. Your story matters to me. I am interested in your story. I'm endlessly interested in people's stories. And if you decide that you want to take it from the inside to the outside, there will be a hearing for it here. And if we take it, as we are doing with this evening, a wee bit further out, there will be a hearing for it there too.
And I think to say about that with Damian is that trust, that was built in relationship when the MAC provided space for the activists to do a workshop with Damian around kintsugi, you know, the art of mending Japanese with golden, cracked pots with golden, which is a beautiful representation. So I think the group had already felt that Damian was the kind of person that they could work with, because despite Damian's accolades and all that he brings with it, Damian comes in as a human being.
100%.
And I think that's what we're so missing across systems, are these power structures. And just what he's speaking about there, he's come into the group, and it's not about them and us, which is so often heard. It's about we're in this together. And in fact, it's that trust that people have that choice. They have that agency within them, and they in fact have that true voice. Yeah. It's just so often the conditions we find ourselves in.
And the other thing that people have, Lisa, and then I'll stop talking. The other thing that people have, and this is important to me that this be said, is a very high level of skill. So it's one thing to encourage people to, you know, if they decide they want to do it, to stand and speak. That's one thing. But what's very hard to do is to convince people you have an enormous level, not just of courage and strength, but skill. But skill, because something has told a lot of people you don't have that skill.
Right.
You might hit the odd thing that you say something with a bit of clarity and distinction, but you don't have skill. And, you know, the 13 or 14 people who are speaking on Thursday night have a very high level of skill.
And some have decided to tell their story through a monologue, others have decided to tell their story through dance, and some have decided to tell their stories through song as well. So I'm conscious we're running out of time here, but Thursday night, this is a night only for family and friends and invited guests for the first one. Why was it felt that that was the best approach that this time with these monologues?
As Damian has said, it's so important that people feel safe, and they're in an environment where they feel able to be heard, you know. And in terms of really looking after people, I think that's what we decided to do, something small. And it may be that this becomes something bigger, but for now it's about us kind of looking after the people in the group and doing what feels right for them.
Mm-hmm. But they're taking a massive step on Thursday night, and to tell their story full stop, and then Thursday night's another part of the process, isn't it?
100%. And also it's that thing of, you know, new script it has been around changing the script here, you know, encouraging people to realise that they matter and they're important, and that their story and what they have to say is really important. So it is that sense of bringing people into the room on Thursday that we want to convey that message to. Do you know what it is? There is a social justice element there in terms of challenging the stereotypes and the narratives around mental health and mental distress, and that will shine through, I think.
And maybe
Thursday.
even changing, yes, societally that's so important, but maybe even, as somebody said, changing the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. You know?
And it's the collective piece, Lynette. The group decided that for this first performance, this is what they wanted to do. Family, friends and invited guests. That's all about choice. That's trauma-informed. Yeah. And then it's also about, although we're choosing what pieces of the story to tell or sing or dance with, it's also a collective. So we're supporting each other and we're relying on each other and we're doing it together. And I think that's the mental health system medicalizes and individualizes, and you end up thinking there's something wrong with me, and there's a lot of shame and stigma with that. This is about collectively standing. So I have my voice as part of this wonderful collective, and that's just transformative for ourselves, the people hearing, and it says, we're giving you permission. I'm finding the space to have my voice heard. You can also do that.
As Magz said, it's about taking the power back. It's been fantastic to have all three of you in studio today. Thank you very much for coming in. It's Magz Gibney, Lisa Morrison and Damian Gorman from New Script, and we're talking this afternoon about the Desperate Monologues, and we'll keep you informed if more progress is made and if that develops even further as the weeks and months go by. That's it from me for today. Thank you very much